what happened to defense? It feels like this is a question that's being asked now more than ever before. The idea that basketball players aren't playing defense as much as they used to. I mean, with some of the clips we've seen, I don't blame anyone for saying this. Some players put in a shocking level of effort, and this is an argument that many older fans use to discredit the new era of basketball. That back in the old days, the defense was 10 times tougher and players were getting torn apart. But this isn't really true. And the idea that defense has gotten worse isn't necessarily true either. You see, the NBA is a league that's gone through many changes throughout its history. And it's because of these changes that we as fans just can't seem to stop comparing different generations. The aspect of defense is considered boring by a lot of people, but it's also arguably the most important part of basketball. Defense wins championships. I'm sure many of you have probably heard this phrase before. It's a universal saying across all sports, and it's actually fairly true. Bill Russell was one of the best defenders of all time, and he has more rings than fingers on both hands. After Michael Jordan won his first of 6 championships, he said the reason why they won was because of defense. In fact, over the past 50 years, 90% of teams who won a championship had at least one All-NBA defender. But also in the past 50 years, the definition of defense has been adjusted quite a few times. Back in the 50s and 60s, a defender could stay in the paint forever if he wanted to. This was back when nobody was shooting on the outside, so to have a center just stay in the key gave defense a huge advantage. Fast forward to the 80s and 90s, this is considered the golden age of basketball. Back when you had to earn the right to score, back when toughness was at an all-time high, and the reason why is because of hand checking. Basically, when guarding someone you were allowed to put your hands all over them, get as physical as you want. Nowadays, this is illegal, which is partly why the league is considered to be soft now. But the defense wasn't necessarily better. Statistically, the league offensive rating was higher in the 80s and 90s than it was in the 2000s, and it was pretty much the same as the 10s. This is because zone defense wasn't allowed back then. Zone is the alternative to man-to-man, where players guard a specific area instead of guarding each player. So despite the fact that you could hit and push your opponent as much as you wanted, the overall defense was actually worse. The reason why players were getting body slammed wasn't because they were better. It was because a lot of them weren't good enough to actually stop anyone fairly. The physicality is what causes this illusion that it was much harder to score back then. But the stats prove that this claim is just blind nostalgia. Numbers don't lie, right? Well, maybe in this case they do. You see, comparing stats from 30 years ago to now isn't actually a fair metric. The reason why is because the NBA has gone through way too many significant changes, and so all the numbers can't be held to the same standard. The old heads do have a point when they say that defense was better back then, because when you compare older players getting thrown to the ground and getting back up like it's nothing, to players who cry when a single finger touches them, it really does feel like the game has gone soft. Let's talk about today's age. There is no denying that the refs are absolutely atrocious. Fouls are being called for literally anything and everything. In fact, most players don't even try to score. They try to get a foul call by abusing the rules. And so the defense can't even focus on stopping the player anymore, because even the tiniest touch is gonna blow the whistle. Players would rather embarrass themselves by yelling and crying at the ref when they intentionally bump into a player and try to get fouled. It's a trend that has many mixed feelings among fans. And so the question then becomes, is the defense getting worse, or is the offense getting way better? Objectively speaking, the players nowadays are way more skilled at defending and scoring. They just are. It's how evolution of the game works. But the NBA specifically has tipped the scales and caused an imbalance with their rules. Now offense has more freedom than ever before, and you can't do as much on defense anymore. Don't hate the players, hate the game. It's not their fault, it's the NBA's fault. The league knows that scoring gets more clicks and views than a defensive play. This is why so many players are dropping so many points. There's bench players who you've never heard of who are dropping 50, which would have never happened 10-20 years ago. In college basketball, you don't see players getting away with travels and carries. In the EuroLeague, you don't see any players doing any foul baiting. You don't really see this in any other league besides the NBA. If the rules hadn't been changed so that every possession favors the offense, we might have seen a completely different league than what we have right now. The truth is, we need a revolutionary player. Think about how many times scoring has changed. First we had Iverson who changed the way we dribble, then we had Curry who changed the way we shoot, and then James Harden who changed the way we travel. but the way players defend has virtually not changed at all. And so offense has gone way ahead, and now nobody can guard anyone anymore. Until we have a Caitlin Clark type of player for defense, the NBA will have no incentive to change anything. So this is the conclusion that I've come up with. Defense hasn't gotten worse. The rapid evolution of offense makes it so that the defense just can't keep up. And this didn't just happen randomly. The NBA changed the rules specifically to favor offense. But whenever this discussion about bad defense comes up, people are quick to blame the players. But it was never a defense issue. It was a rules issue. That's why it's unfair to compare stats in today's age versus 30 years ago. It's like trying to compare artists from different genres. The standards are completely different. As much as many of us don't want to admit it, the NBA has gotten softer now. Superstars are definitely more skilled, but when you're giving the MVP to a guy who's flopping every single game, it's kinda hard to say that these guys are the peak of basketball. Players need to stop getting punished for playing good defense. It's not boring, it's an essential part of basketball. I don't know about you, but whenever I see another player drop 70 points again, it's not even impressive anymore. Cause everyone's putting up insane numbers. And if everyone has inflated stat lines, then our standards for what's impressive will get higher and higher, and the past will pale in comparison. Defense wins championships? I guess we'll see.